82%, there's been some research that came out that last week that 82% of people are changing their marketing plans almost entirely. So it is that piece of if you're going to do something, what do you do, and what's going to be most beneficial to you now. In terms of how you communicate now, or how you use the time right now, I would say it's extremely important you get your tone of voice right. There's a lot going on right now, and in terms of how you communicate now, you need to be acknowledging that we're in incredibly uncertain times. People are feeling nervous. People are going through different things right now, some horrendous things, some people are bored at home. There's a whole range of things, but there has to be a real empathy about what people are going through right now and acknowledging that. And some of the communication pieces are about understanding we're in changing times. And then if you're a brand or an individual, it's how do you contribute to the conversation positively? And if you don't have something positive to say, or you're not going to be contributing, you don't need to be talking all the time. But it's really about how can you in some of your communications acknowledge that there's big change afoot, and that we're going through difficult times, and how can you be inspiring and uplifting in that period, or how can you be part of the solution? And that's sort of the immediate piece right now. How do you look at how you're communicating?
And earlier when we were chatting, you were saying a key part of that also, kind of what we should be doing now, is also getting our houses in order. So what?
Yes, Yes, sorry, and I thought we were going to come on to that later. That is the most important thing that we would advise right now. So the piece about the tone of voice is the now, how you're communicating now. But we know things are going to be different in coming months. They're not going to go back exactly like they were. But what is really important right now for brands is that you're not waiting for things to be better before you start doing. And if you sort of use this acknowledgement, this analogy of getting your house in order, there's a little bit about like, what are you doing at home now? People are probably doing some things of tidying and getting things organized. And this is a really good opportunity, even though it's an unknown time, to start thinking about and how are we talking about our brand? How do we really get to know our target audiences? Let's delve deeper into that. Let's look at what they're thinking. What media are they consuming right now? What are our competitors doing? To really, really look at that. And it's the sort of thing that brands always want to do that work, but it's often something that takes big thinking. It takes concentration. It takes getting full teams together. And sometimes that doesn't happen as much as it should do, and one of the things we're finding is amazing that founders of these businesses are now know they need to devote the time to that, because times ahead are uncertain and they need to be as strong and as differentiated as they can be and as well articulated. So people are really spending that time. And what we're finding, we've done a couple of weeks ago, we started with our first online brand workshop. And actually I was concerned that it wouldn't work on Zoom. It worked almost better than when we do it in our office. When we do it in our office, we have lots of treats and it's more fun, I suppose. But actually people were very concentrated. We gave them some homework to do. So people really had to think about their positioning and their brand. But I think people want to think about that now. What was interesting for my team was that it was really meaty, interesting work. And they were delighted and inspired by getting to spend that time right now. But I think what you want to come out of that is to feel that when things rebound, and they will rebound, we don't know what that's going to look like exactly, but you want to be in the very best position you can do. And that may be, we're looking at our clients are having contingency plans. Some of them who are retailers are they looking at June openings? Are they looking at August openings? Are they looking at September, end of September? We don't know, but you need to be ready for some of those things. And part of what happens when you do that planning is you can start thinking where there are opportunities. So it's about thinking of, here's who our brand, here's what our brand is, here's what we stand for, these are our values. And that helps you inform your communication now a lot. But it's also about thinking, where are the opportunities when you start thinking about your brand? Why shouldn't you be online? Or why shouldn't you have a lot more, use influencers in a different way? It's just really rethinking everything, but being clear on your tone of voice, but also in terms of what your brand personality is, what you stand for, what your purpose is, helps you make all those other decisions and helps you put that time into it so that the next, it's sort of about, you should really be able to clearly say, why are we different from all of our competitors? But then be able to have that work ready when you're ready to jump into, into the next phase when things start getting back to not to normal, but to whatever the new normal is going to be.
We were speaking earlier about, and I think that this is something I've been concerned about, kind of. So how do we do this in a sensitive way? You know, what is in terms of sort of relevance and understanding and having a finger on the, you know, being in line with, I guess, the zeitgeist of where we are at the moment. How do we, because I find on LinkedIn, and I'm sure everybody would agree with this, that you get sent emails and messages every day from people trying to sell you stuff. So how do we not become part of that kind of crowd? How do we communicate our brands but remain sensitive? And, you know, does everything that we talk about need to have a COVID-19 slant? Does everybody need to, you know, be trying to do something meaningful in that space? Or can we, with good conscience, be kind of presenting our brands without feeling guilty that the tone is wrong or the time is wrong? I don't know. I think for me, that's certainly a really uncertain landscape.
That's a great question. And that's what we're getting asked on a daily basis. And I think you have to start from, where are you in the equation? You know, as a brand or as an individual, what do you do? And that's your most important starting point. There are some people who have a really obvious link. You know, I don't think brands or people who are not involved in the medical side of things or the scientific side should be talking about cures for COVID-19. I think we should all be supporting the NHS, but it's finding your place within that conversation. And I think it could be a number of things. I think there needs to be acknowledgement and understanding that these are difficult times. And that acknowledgement allows you to talk about more things. You know, we're finding on the one hand, people just want to be entertained right now or inspired, but it needs to be that out there. And if you're talking about content or conversations with the lens of this is a difficult time for everybody, we're hoping this is going to make you happy or uplift you. There's so many different ways people can get involved with the conversation. One of the big things that we're seeing that's fantastic that's coming out of this is kindness and compassion, and people who are finding ways to do their part, finding ways to raise money for the NHS, or finding ways just to spread the message creatively about staying home. You know, that's a huge part of this, but brands are finding clever ways to do that. They're also finding inspiring ways to talk about, if you are at home, what can you do? You know, there's brands who we've been working with that are doing online learning. You know, they've been working with an art company who's got fantastic streaming of art classes, and that's something that's inspiring. You know, or we've got people who are talking about, if you are going to be at home, you know, how are you going to cook? You know, and we've had brands who are doing online cooking classes, you know, they're doing food deliveries, you know, so there's lots of different things people can do, but it's really with that lens of what are you doing in that part? And if you're talking about contributing, then really contribute. You know, I think that's, people see through that very clearly. If you're saying, you know, a lot of brands will decide that they want to raise money for a cause, and that money isn't raised by the brand itself, it's raised by the people who are buying the product. You know, they're giving, you know, a certain percentage of that. And if that's what you're doing, that's fine. You can say that, but brands should be doing something themselves. What are they contributing? And this creativity that we're finding with brands manufacturing things, whether it be hand sterilizer to hand sanitizer through to, you know, upmarket restaurants deciding they're going to do food deliveries for care workers or care homes. You know, there's so many different ways, but it's about creativity. And I think what people are appreciating in communication is that people are thinking differently and all trying to be part of that conversation. If you're not part of any of those conversations, then I think it's probably best to lie low on some of those things. It is an interesting time for founders to speak. We've been having a lot of people saying, I don't normally get on Instagram, or I'm not normally seen as a face for my business. Is now the time? And to that question, we sort of say, well, if you're comfortable with it and you've got something good to say, then now is a good time, but don't feel that you have to. But people are actually really valuing that chance to get an insight into people who've developed brands and knowing that, you know, they're relatable people, that they've got worries right now. They're not sure where their business is going. And some of the people are getting in front of the camera because they know that's going to give them a better shot at keeping their business afloat. You know, they're out there communicating because they want somebody to see. They want to create partnerships or strategic relationships with people that are going to allow them to sell their product differently or to get new audiences. But it's also a piece where people get to see people inside their homes. They get to have a whole different understanding of somebody who's behind a brand. And a lot of the times people choose brands, it's because they like what the brand stands for and they're inspired by the founder. I would say that's especially true for female founders. I think we've seen this huge swell of interest in supporting small businesses. We went from this piece of nobody should buy anything right now, we're in lockdown and stay at home, through to actually these are businesses that aren't going to stick around if we don't start supporting them. And that's been a wonderful thing of people shopping locally, people wanting to support brands. You've seen things like people buying gift cards for restaurants who they want to support. Or you see people for small businesses, again, buying gift vouchers for clothing brands or small indie clothing brands who can't be open right now.
You touched on collaboration as part of what you were saying as an opportunity. Have you got some examples of how that's been working with your clients and what that looks like?
Yeah, I think collaborations can exist on so many levels. They can be quite simple ones of, in the best sense, collaborations are about really creating something incredibly creative and creating a new, taking the brand to a new place. And I think we have a couple of clients who are working on using their brand platform as a place for communication. We've got one who's marketing to teen boys, and they're looking to use their website as a platform to hear how this Gen Z feels and changes of times. They're going to be launching blogs, and it's a very interesting creative project, which is going to lead into a lot more content for them. We have other people who are collaborating with other people in the supply chain. So they're now delivering when they didn't. They're supporting other brands in different ways, and just stuff that they would have seen people as competitors. And now they're saying, here's a brand who's in the same boat as we are, and we know we have the same target audience. Let's work together to look at how we can work and make sure that we still get our product moving. I would say right now is especially interesting if you look at how people are partnering in terms of how they actually get products to market. I think that's incredibly interesting because there's a lot of people right now who don't have anybody working. They've got maybe a founder who's at home, but their websites are closed potentially. Their stores are closed. And for them, how do they use this opportunity to look at other markets? And I think you have to look globally. We have brands who are small brands who never would have thought they would sell in other markets. And now all of a sudden it's partly a matter of survival. We have a retail partner we're working with right now who's helping to get beauty brands and fashion brands into China as pop-ups, and it's a very interesting concept, but they're back up and running in a lot of aspects right now, and they're working differently there, but people are buying there. And that's a really nimble thing these people never would have thought of before. But now they have stock that might go off. They've got short sell-by dates for certain products, and that's a really innovative way to be looking at that.
And you, part of the sort of, I guess, the what we should be doing now and the actual practical steps we're taking, you had mentioned to me about being brave, and that's one of the key pieces of advice you're giving to your clients. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what that means? Like, how can we be brave, and what does that mean?
I think the China example is in one instance is being brave. It's taking an opportunity to do something you might never have looked at right now. And I think that's kind of a low risk thing to do right now because it's something that's a pop-up, it's small initiative, but could be a whole new route to finding new customers here, but also because a lot of those people would also be shopping in the UK, but also abroad. I think it's really about going back to your brand values and thinking creatively how you differentiate yourself. So coming out of the gates when things are looking better in a couple of months, there's going to be everybody going after that rebound pound. They're going to want to be out there saying, we have to be selling now. We have to have our brand, back in the market. And so the ones that are more compelling and they're more themselves. You know, a lot of this isn't about trying to be who you're not, but it's saying, knowing who you are and communicating that the very best. And I think that may be launching a creative campaign. It may be launching a collaboration. You know, I think there's so much creativity right now and innovation that's going to come out of this horrible period. And it's about the ones that are doing that best. You know, it may be we have people that we know who are making new products because they're thinking about the shift in mindset to being more concerned about our health. I don't think that's going to go away overnight. I think that are more concerned about you know, wellness and focusing on what they think are the most important priorities for them. You know, we do a lot of work in the sustainability space, and I think there's some concern that people won't keep up some of those things because they're so expensive. But there's also you know, a feeling that there's a lot of things in the world that may have led to this situation that we're in, and how do we rethink how we consume and what matters. And that piece of really understanding that insight to create campaigns about your business, I think, are where the real creativity and opportunity is going to come, and really taking a stand.
And so, I mean, do you think this is a time to take risks, to try things we wouldn't have tried normally? I mean, obviously financially we need to be aware of what the implications are of those things, but are you seeing that with your clients, that they're more willing to try things that ordinarily would not have been on the table for them?
I do. And I know that could seem counterintuitive. I think they want to try new things, but with the thought behind it. What they're not trying to do is throw paint at the wall and say, we're going to try loads of things and see what works. I think they have to be extremely cognizant of what their marketing budgets are. Of course, they'll be smaller right now. Teams are often smaller. You know, a lot of these things are the founders themselves saying, I know I need to be ready and do something, and I'm going to drive this campaign myself. But I do think that, and part of that is a necessity. You know, we have to be creative and be the ones that try harder, the brands that try harder and have really focused their messaging and are understood better because of how they're explaining themselves. I think we'll do better. But people will, I mean, so much has changed in such a short period of time, and that continuing to change. You know, people are expecting brands to be more innovative. They're expecting them to be more involved. So the people who can do that best, I think, will do better. And sometimes good ideas don't necessarily cost lots of money. You know, part of founders being online, part of founders being more visible, that's just about them being present. That's about them listening and having conversations. It's not about them necessarily spending loads of money. But there are other ways that people can be bold too. You know, how do they use influencers? There's a lot of interesting people who we wouldn't normally have access to as influencers or as people who could speak for our brand. That's one piece that we are seeing a lot of, that brands are very confidently allowing third parties to speak about their brand and be part of that conversation, because nobody is doing photo shoots right now. Nobody is out there doing creative campaigns in the normal way. And so that's another way of doing something creative and also quite cost effective.
Is there more appetite at the moment from influencers and celebrities to be doing kind of unpaid or more contra type collaborations and things? Because there is that sort of sense that sometimes it's tacky to be asking for money right now when we should all be coming together in the spirit of kindness. Are you seeing that with the influencers and celebrities that you work with?
I think you bring on a really interesting point, is about a lot of these conversations. People are happy to be part of them if they're not transactional, you know, and we were talking about tone of voice in the right now, not about when things are looking like we're in the rebound, but, you know, it shouldn't be about buy this product. It's about engaging with them now and building up that brand momentum and also those relationships. So I think if it's something that has an angle, which is about common good, and also the brands that they truly genuinely like and they want to support, I think there's huge support for small businesses or for brands that they think are doing the right thing. Yeah, I absolutely think there's appetite for that, but in a way that's not forced. It has to be really, has to have integrity, and there should be some element of whether it's helping, you know, talk about the stay at home theme right now and that directive, or it's about supporting these brands, you know, as they go out into the future. But yeah, and I think it starts from having a relationship with a brand anyway, usually. But there are a lot of people who have a lot more time on their hands, and most of us here, I think, are people who are probably still extremely busy right now. I'm probably busier than I've ever been, and that's because people are in crisis, but also I need to keep my business going. But there's a lot of people who work in fields where they won't have that. They have some downtime and want to be part of something or engaging.
And in terms of that, then, if there were influencers that we wanted to work with, or should we just be bold and reach out to them and say, hey, I've got an idea of what I want to do? I mean, is there more willingness, I think, to accept those kinds of requests than they might have been in the past? Is that what
I think absolutely. And I think it's that piece of to work well with influencers, you have to do your homework. You have to, when we pick influencers to work with, we think very carefully about where are they in their trajectory. Are they on the ascendance? If they're too big and I'm not saying we would say no to Gwyneth Paltrow if one of our clients wanted to work with her. But on the other hand, it's one of those things about what's in it for them. Are they trying to raise their profile? Timing is everything in a lot of those things in terms of getting their attention and their focus. If you're working with an influencer, you want it to be authentic enough so it's not a transactional one-off. They come in and they do a post. It looks forced. You want them to collaborate with you. You want them to do something with you so they can create and they can be part of being a voice for the brand with their own lens on it. So that sort of work is actually quite a nice opportunity. We've often worked, for instance, in the fashion space. You bring in a designer to work on something and allow them to create something in a completely different sector. We had a drinks client a couple of years ago that we worked with Antonio Berardi, the fashion designer, and we allowed him to make this beautiful Italian-inspired set of luggage. He didn't sell that kind of work. He didn't sell those items already within his collections, and he absolutely loved it. And it was an opportunity for him to do something different and be really, really creative. And it helped him too. We paid him for that one in that instance, but a lot of influencers don't always need to be paid if you strike the right deal and it's good for them, whether it's barter and I think people are much more open to that kind of work right now. And it comes down to a compelling ask. If you're asking somebody to do something, you should have gone through those questions of understanding where they are, what is their digital footprint, what influence can they bring to you, but as a brand, what do you bring to them? How big is your platform? Is that good for them because they get seen in a different light, or are you going to be putting PR budget behind something so they're going to have opportunity to be profiled and to raise their profile in ways that are helpful to them too? But I think it's thinking of it in a give and take way. But there's a lot more openness right now. And sometimes a call from the founder of a business is actually very flattering, to be able to pick somebody and say why you like them and have a really compelling reason. And a lot of that is about research. You can often find that if people already like your brand, that's a better starting point than having them not. But if you also think they're a really good fit and they would like your brand, then put a call in, send them some product.
Cool. You mentioned sustainability, and I know you do a lot in that space because you have quite a few circular fashion clients, and you work with Positive Luxury as well.
Yes.
Going forward, because obviously sustainability has been really key in terms of messaging for brands already. Going forward, is that going to become even more important along with the whole health and safety perspective? I mean, are those kind of two messaging pillars we should be building into the DNA of our brands and how we communicate them?
Yes, absolutely. I think the first one, which is an easier one to answer, is on the sort of the hygiene and safety factor. I think everybody is thinking about things differently, so things that we would not even have thought about before, in terms of trying on clothes in a shop. The touch points you'd go through it means leaving your house, it's going on potentially on public transport or in an Uber, or even getting places is going to have a whole new set of questions about how do we do that safely, looking at how people will experience things from a retail perspective. And there's a lot of things. If we look in China right now, people are booking to try on clothes. You have to book in advance if you want to try clothes on. You have to, they're sterile, they're disinfecting the clothes before people try them on. All those sorts of things. How people do safe contactless collection if they're dropping something off a package. If you've got circular fashion, that's going to be something, again, how do you look at making sure those products are truly clean? There's no chance that there's going to be any contamination or anything infectious on them. If you think of the words that people are using, we never had people use words when they're describing a lot of the processes. Before, people wanted more contact, they wanted service. Now people don't want to necessarily see the delivery person who's bringing it to them. And those are things that we are going to have to address in a big way. And I don't think those are going to go away. I don't think people are going to all of a sudden not be worried about that in a few months. I think that will be there for a good long time. In terms of sustainability, I think I think on a broader level, people are going to be, on the one hand, there's going to be some pent up demand. We look in China on Sunday, they had their highest ever sales in an Hermes store in one day, of people going and I think it was like 2.8 million in one day in one store. And that's probably, whether they call it revenge spending or that real bounce back of pent up demand. But I think for a lot of people, it's going to be about them being much more thoughtful. They've probably realized that they could do with a lot less. And they're going to be more choosy about how they spend their money. They also will have less money in lots of instances. We look at the stock market, there's going to be a lot of people who are out of jobs, so weaving all those sorts of things partly into the sustainability message. But I sincerely hope that some of what's gone on is not going to derail any of the sustainability initiatives that have been so amazing and growing over the last couple of years, especially this year. But I think those things are important. But it's again how you weave that message into how you're producing things, how you're engaging with your audiences. I've just lost you there.
Sorry, I'm muted. There we go. In terms of that, how important is it then when we are sort of reformulating our message or kind of revisiting how we present our brands to the world, is it that we should be talking to our customers, our suppliers, kind of all of the sort of stakeholders in our chain? I mean, is that something now going forward that we really need to pay a lot more attention to than just banging our own drums the way we might have in the past?
I think communication is really vital. I think if you were to think about your own conversations you might have had recently, I've had conversations I have never had with people before in this period of time, whether they be people that wonder if they're going to see their parents again. You have conversations with people that feel they're going to lose their businesses or have been ill, and didn't know if they were going to get better. And I think all of what's happening in the world has broken down a lot of barriers. And I think if you can be a good listener and also be empathetic and have those conversations. I had a client who I had a conversation with for 2 hours yesterday, and it was mostly about how we were living in our houses with children and homeschooling, but how it made us look at the world differently in a lot of ways. And it was a fascinating conversation that made me understand her in a way I'd never understood her before. So I think being human about it, having good conversations with people, but then understanding the people, I kind of thought about this, about, who's your A team? Who are the people that actually are part of your team on a regular basis that you might not think about all the time, but those are your people that help you keep your business going, but they also might be the people that keep you as a person going. Who are your friends that when the chips are down, you want to talk to? Those conversations are incredibly important for morale right now. In terms of your business, do you speak to your bank manager regularly? Are there things your bank can be doing to help you right now? Have you spoken to your landlord? I'm very lucky. We have a great landlord. We moved into a new office, which was finished the day before the lockdown. Our last piece of furniture arrived. And it's heartbreaking. It's the most beautiful office. It's exactly what I always wanted, and it's gorgeous, and it is totally empty. And those things are hard. Our landlord he had a terrific response to it. He said, we're going to split the difference. I can't give you a rent-free period, but you go in 50, I'll go in 50 and for a quarter. And that's enormously helpful for us, and those are things that have those conversations. Don't be afraid to ask, and be able to be vulnerable. If everybody says, oh yeah, everything's fine, then nobody's going to offer to help you. But these are the conversations we need to have. You need to talk to suppliers, and we're a business. We have some people who haven't paid us. And some of them have been amazing, who've said, I am so sorry, I can't pay you right now, but can we do a payment plan? How can I help you? What can we do? I don't mind if somebody is going to pick up the phone and talk to me, but it's the other pieces where people aren't having those conversations, they're hiding. And, being able to be in that space where you're having a conversation all of a sudden leads to a lot of other potential conversations that can be very helpful. I mean, for us, we've tried to match make, for instance, lots of our clients. Is there one client that can help the other? And we've always done that. That's often why people come to us, because we have a pool of clients that aren't really competing against each other, but they're targeting mostly the same sort of people in the end. But how can you as individuals, as business owners or consultants, how can you help other people? I mean, there's a bunch of people I've called recently and said, do you know what? This would be really helpful for you. One of the people I called was my hairdresser. I was thinking of my A team, thinking, I'm not going to be able to get my hair highlighted for a long time. How can I help them? Here's an opportunity for them, and thinking that way. So I think it's about generosity, but it's also about really thinking, are there media partnerships that you can have? And rather than paying for them, is there something else you can do? We've had a couple people we have an accelerator program for female founded brands and sustainable brands. We've done a bunch of new pro bono work in this period, and we've kept it open for people to say, if you've got a really good cause and we can help you with it, then call us up and we'll look at it and we'll help you if we can. And people are doing that all over the place. There are good business advisors who again might help. Are they people that advise you on other things? Are your accountants, could they be helpful? I think it's really being very open about it.
And that leads me actually to the question. I mean, you're very much a media gatekeeper, and I think for many of us, dealing with the media and understanding the media landscape at the moment is challenging. So what are your observations around, how to deal with journalists right now? What do they want to hear about? How do they want to be engaged with? Should we be sending out press releases, or, what's the sort of the best way to approach the media right now?
I think the question to any way we communicate right now is sensitively and just being really thoughtful about it. I think it really depends what you're communicating on, so for our clients, we work quite holistically. So some of them might be very happy to speak to the business press. If somebody wants to commentate on an industry, what's happening in the retail sector or the luxury sector or the beauty or wellness sector, they would be thrilled to have that opportunity. And people are looking for people to commentate. So that's a really big win for some brands, because they get to be available, and it's easier for them because normally you have to go to the studio for that sort of a thing. So for them, that's a really big win, because they may then be able to reach new audiences. On the other hand, we have some of our clients who do not want to be talking about, and some of them are bigger retailers, they don't want to be talking about furloughing programs. They don't want to be talking about what's going behind the doors, or the fact that they're planning for scenarios in about 18 months of things still being disrupted. They don't really want to be talking about that. When it comes down to some of the consumer journalists, I think it's a real span of things. So I've got something a bit weird going on. My cat is fiddling with the cord of my device here. I'm hoping it's not going to fall off the screen. Anyway, in terms of those sorts of journalists, if you look at the travel press, that's a really tricky one. We've got clients in the luxury travel space. They're now looking at right now how we completely focus on China right now, because we know there's an appetite right there. That's a huge shift for them, and an opportunity for them to become much more digitally savvy. We're now looking at WeChat and how we can support them that way. I think people are looking at how they might do things differently. I think there's a piece in travel that might be very close to home. People want to do staycations. They don't want to get on planes. Alongside this, want to do multi-generational trips. They want to have those milestone moments that they haven't been able to have now, or they may never have again. So I think there's really two schools of thought on that. The main area where we're seeing a lot of interest from press is around anything to do with wellness or beauty. The media are loving having conversations with founders of beauty brands, really easy things that you can do We've been packaging up lots of Q&As from founders of our clients, sending them out to media. They love that. It's easy content. We've got to remember, for journalists, a lot of them are freelancers anyway, so they work from home. So it's not a huge change for them, but then a lot of those people will have children at home, which is incredibly hard. So if we can make their lives easier by prepackaging content that they can use easily. In newsrooms, there are much less people there. There are skeleton staffs. That's really hard as well. But wellness and, thoughtful stuff on wellness, beauty, how to take care of yourself, self-care, how to stay healthy is very, very welcomed right now. I think on the fashion side of things, it's welcomed in terms of how to be comfortable at home. There are some things where people are talking about, what am I looking forward to wearing later? I think that's slightly trickier territory, but I think if it's done well, it's fine. A lot of people are talking about how to clear out their closet, how to look at repurposing their wardrobe, looking at, getting their stuff in order at home. Food is an interesting one, content-wise. There's great, I know there's questions coming up. You're getting those questions, right, Michelle? It's just gone silent. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I keep muting because my computer's beeping every time people come in and out. Yes, we've got some questions.
Okay. No, I'm just saying, I want to make sure that you're getting them because I'm trying to read them and speak at the same time. So in terms of things like food, there's huge opportunities. Ladurée, one of our clients, is doing these wonderful cooking pieces where they're showing you how to make a French omelette, or they're showing you how to make croissants or macaroons. Those have been hugely popular. I think the real people things have been really popular too, in terms of brands like to talk about influencers, whether they're working with your brands or not. Anything you can do at home, anything that might be educational too, is hugely interesting. I'm getting stuff every day, in terms of what can you buy online? Where can I learn at home? We work with a wine company, and Forbes did a big piece for them. It completely changed their business, and they were really struggling right now because it's a difficult time. And all of a sudden, to get Forbes do a piece on, them as a terrific way to kind of have your lockdown seller, was a gigantic boost for them.
Yeah. Well, at that point, shall we switch over to some of the questions that are coming through? So I can read through these ones, and then if anyone wants to ask any questions, we can take it from there. So I've got a question from Joy. She owns a style and image consultancy called Potential You, and her question is about how she communicates her new online styling services, because obviously she was very much a one-to-one, face-to-face service provider, and she's now doing online consultations. What's the best way for her to communicate that in terms of her newsletters and her online styling? She's without being salesy.
First of all, I think that's a great offering. So I think there's a lot of things that people are thinking about that had to be about you leaving your house or about somebody coming into your home. This idea that you can do so much from Zoom or from others I think it's quite revolutionary. The fact that you can use this time to up your style game is really compelling. And if part of that is also a wardrobe editing service, again, I think that's really compelling right now. I think that could be newsletters. I think that's a really simple email to a bunch of editors. Ask them if they want to try it. That would be a really nice offer for somebody to say, and I think pick the right ones. If you're Joy, I think we've met before, Joy, actually. But if you're looking at doing that, then if you're looking to target a journalist, a really good piece of advice there, I think, would be to pick some journalists that you think would be not the obvious choices for that. So you're probably not going to go to Elisa Armstrong and say, let me edit your wardrobe or give you a style remake when you're at home. She writes about that. That's probably not going to be something she's going to be, answering your call immediately on. But pick somebody else who's, is there a terrific Evening Standard journalist that might write about that? Somebody from ES Magazine, or somebody from, one of the weekend newspapers. Just being a bit counterintuitive that way about people that you like the way they write. We've had very good success picking interesting journalists that are right for a variety of things, more features writers. So I would think a little bit about that. And I would think about potentially going after some influencers who might talk about you and what you've done on their platforms. again, I would pick people that aren't positioning themselves only on a style platform, because again, they're probably not going to talk about having a stylist necessarily. And again, maybe look at the sustainability side of it. Is that something that's part of your offering? Having a sustainable styling service slash, if you're repurposing some of the clothes or doing wardrobe editing, is quite different and interesting.
Brilliant. And then we have a question from Helen. She's asking if you have any specific advice for consulting or service or consulting advice for B2B businesses. So what should B2B businesses be doing right now?
I think the piece that I talked a little bit earlier about, really about engaging with your stakeholders, is incredibly important. I also think, and are you talking about media right now, or is that just general advice?
Helen, are you there? I don't know if she's left.
General advice. I mean,
yeah.
I think from that piece, it's, and by the way, my name is not Lisa. I'm so sorry. My first name is Lisa. On my iPad, it says Lisa, but I'm getting messages to Lisa. It is Gabrielle. It's just one of those names I never use, and I can't seem to get it off my iPad. So generally, really engage with stakeholders, but think about people that you come across on a really regular basis. Are there people in your supply chain, or people that you've collaborated with previously, or are there competitors or brands that are adjacent to yours? Are there people that you could call them up, ask them how they're doing? Being able to be vulnerable in that position, great things come out of those conversations, whether it be, can we share in some way something? Can we share whether you have to buy a certain ingredient? Could you share, because you don't want to be spending loads of money right now? Could you look at doing a pop-up in somebody's space? Could you look at collaborating together? Could you look at collaborating on a delivery service? Could you look at sharing some premises? There's lots of things that people could look to do. There's going to be loads of pop-up space after this whole period too. We work a lot with a retail person who specifically does pop-ups with us, and those sort of opportunities for rent-free periods and being ready to go with something really compelling will be there. So I think it's just, and thinking about people you admire in business. Pick up the phone to somebody if you like them. People are so flattered by getting a call from somebody, or somebody who's been through it before. I think that's incredibly useful. These learnings from this time are not like previous recessions, and there's been nothing like this before, really, because I don't think we're talking about coming out of a recession into this situation. The economy was fairly robust before this happened, so hopefully things won't be that hard to pick up, but yet we don't know the time scale on this. But just that would be my best advice. Really look out for people you admire and talk to the people that you think are in similar spaces to you, and see how you might be able to collaborate.
Brilliant. We've had a question about China. What social media platforms would you recommend to market online training courses to Chinese interior designers?
Probably want to think about that one, which I would be happy to think about and come back to. I think WeChat is great. The proximity. I think China is quite specific in terms of your targeting and how and who you target. It's quite a different media landscape. A lot of stuff in the media is quite pay to play in China, and you need to be thinking about which sorts of, how do you segment the communities you want very specifically and go after them. So I think it would be probably a WeChat or something like that. I would say that would be my first go, but I would happily talk to you a little bit more about that with a little bit of advice on that, if you'd like.
Brilliant. And then we've got a question from Liz, and she's asking, and I think this is a brilliant question, what's your view on discounting offerings, particularly that now that given, potential customers have far less funds available to them, or certainly that's the perception. Is this detrimental to your brand?
I think it's all about how you offer value. So I think price slashing, in an overt way, buy it for 40%, 60% off, is never particularly great for building your brand value. I do think it's an interesting time that people have more time to be on their computers looking at where there are discounts. And I think people are expecting, in some respects, that there are going to be discounts. I don't know what's going to happen, in terms of fashion and stuff. We've missed a whole season almost. What's going to happen? Are those people just going to, a lot of people have canceled orders. Are they going to hold off? Are they going to have to sell things at knockdown prices? I think it's being thoughtful about it. I mean, I would hope after some of this, there'll be this wanting to support small businesses, but people are going to be more careful about how they spend. I think anything that you do in terms of discounting should be very thoughtful about how it's done, and careful about which products you do it on in your range. Can you do things that can encourage people to discover different parts of your range or different products? Not necessarily doing it on your hero products, maybe doing it on your hero products if you want to get people to understand them more. But the wording is important too, in terms of how you discount. You have to be confident in terms of not looking like, your house is on fire and you're trying to sell the stuff off fast. A lot of it's about the tone.
Okay, brilliant.
And the levels of discount too.
Okay, does anyone else have more questions? I've gone through all the ones in the chat now, but if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, please do.
I just have a question surrounding influencers. You refer to them, and then you refer to designers and sort of more industry leaders. In terms of influencers and people that have built followings on Instagram and social media platforms that don't necessarily possess a skill set, but rather they have an audience that is based on desirability and sort of those kinds of things. Where do you see those types of influencers fitting in going forward? And do you really see them as benefiting brands in a time where we've got to value the old-fashioned kind of skills and hard work?
That's a really good question. I think people will think quite thoughtfully about the value those people bring right now, and I think that will be under scrutiny. There is a place for some of influencers where they bring that desirability to a brand, whether they have a huge audience. When we have clients come to us and say, look, we're thinking of bringing, often brands will be approached directly by influencers, and they'll come to us and say, this person has 2 million followers. They're amazing. This person would be amazing. It's going to change my business. And our first question is, well, who are they? What's their reach? How genuine is the following, and how are they segmented down? I think it's a case by case thing. I think there'll be less resonance for ones that aren't, they don't stand for something, or there's some amazing influencers that have huge followings, but they actually, whether they're in the wellness space or that they're doing something. I think the ones that are doing not so much but their own profiles, I think there's less space for them. But then some brands can benefit from that. You got, some of them it has worked for them, but I would say there'd be less towards that end of the spectrum.
Okay. Anyone else? Thanks, Jess.
Sure.
Does anyone else have any more questions? Okay, well, we are about to round up. Gabrielle, in conclusion, is there anything else that we might have not touched on that you wanted to share with everybody?
Just looking at my notes. No, I think there's one other piece that I just think has been really an amazing sort of theme for some of the communication people that have been, how they've been talking, that I think is worth thinking about. There's been an amazing kind of solidarity right now of people for the first time seeing some of the people on the front lines in a very different way. And I think there's something incredible about that kindness, but that also that empathy for these people every day are going out and risking their lives to keep others safe. And I think that acknowledgement also that everybody is in a very different place right now. On the one hand, you can have people saying all the time they're completely bored at home, but actually we're safe at home. And that sort of thinking and theming, and I'm hoping some of those things will carry on in terms of how brands do thank the people that are, whether they're their own store people that are actually keeping things running because they're behind the tills, or they're still serving people, or people in warehouses. And that whole piece, I think, is something that I hope there'll be a change in prioritization of that, and there'll be a continued thankfulness about that. But I think that's quite rich territory. If you don't have something to speak about yourself, still being able to be thankful for that, and shout out and call out the people that are keeping things running. And that's even to do with your own people in your own supply chain. Are they the people that never get talked about, but they're the people that actually deliver your products, or they're the people who package them up in the warehouse? And that's quite an interesting behind the scenes piece, but also a piece where we can be quite thoughtful and thankful for those people that usually don't get seen.
Do you think that we could reach a level of fatigue around brands offering discounts to NHS workers? Or because I think certainly on Instagram, a lot of the sort of fashion-based products, like companies that I follow have been offering those kinds of discounts. And I suppose I sort of look at them and think, well, yeah, that's great for someone who maybe wouldn't have necessarily been able to afford that before. But do we need to be cautious about how much
I think some of it,
the bandwagon with these things?
I do think some of it is there have been a whole bunch of high-end fashion retailers saying that, we're going to loan you a dress so you can go out and celebrate after this is all over. Those people don't even know if they're going to be alive, those people who are frontline, honestly, at the end of this. Or is that what they're really caring about right now? I think it has to be really quite resonant. It has to be, there's a lot of bad things have come out of this situation right now. I think the worst is that there are huge inequalities in this situation. There are people who have space to be honest, ride this out quite well at home in space where they feel they have enough of everything, and they may be a little bit bored at home or feel their freedom has been curtailed, but they're safe, versus people that don't have those choices. They can't decide not to work right now. They can't, they're in crowded circumstances. Or you have people that, it's easy for me to work from home right now. I'm in a room on my own, I've got my cat with me, but you have other people who, you've got people sharing a flat. You've got 6 people trying to work off the same kitchen table, or, there's just so many different scenarios for people. And that feeling of being very lucky right now. And I think a lot of things just won't matter to certain people. A lot of the frillier things, part of this is getting through this in good health, and also with as little financial, there is huge financial impact, but kind of getting through it with as little damage as possible. And some things can seem very peripheral, and I think that's that's the thing to be watchful of. Do people want NHS workers to be getting jewelry and stuff? Maybe if somebody's going to give them a ring so they can propose to somebody they haven't seen, who's been like, if there's the right reason for it, there are some things where there've been wonderful stories. I think the hotel pieces I love the fact that was somebody who was staying in a wonderful hotel the other day and said, I've never been able to stay in a hotel like this before. And actually she was really delighted with it, even though she's exhausted. But so I think it's just very much being thoughtful about each thing, thinking about how somebody else might feel in that situation, and not leveraging the NHS, not using the situation as a, would the people want the products? We had one client that we said, let's not give the products to the NHS because it seems a little bit of a shoehorned, like we're trying too hard, and it seems like it's more good for us than it is for them. But maybe we do something later. In some of those instances, we've said brands that we work with, this isn't about giving product. You should be giving some money, or can you give some of your sales force? Can you give, can you do, if it's a manufacturer, can you do something else? So I think there are ways that people can be creative about that, but they don't have to be doing it if it's not really the right fit right now.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. I'll do a last call for questions. I know, Joy, you've got one here about, Joy has asked about the frequency of newsletters. So considering that people are staying at home, should we be upping the frequency of our communication, or is that just adding to noise?
I think people read the stuff they like. There's ones that I love reading and I read them every day. If I get things that I think are fantastic, I think don't keep anything too long. Have great headlines, so you're clear, in terms of, and not clickbait. So if you're saying that you're going to talk about something in a newsletter, make it clear in the headline of it. So if it's something that's appealing to somebody, then they can click in and they're actually going to read about what you're talking about. There's a lot of stuff that comes up that says they're going to tell you something, you can't find it when you actually go through, because it was sort of a headline that they thought people would be interested in. So I think once a week is probably good, but some you might want to do twice a week. It totally depends on the product and what you have, what your offering is, and how fast paced that communication is. What were people used to seeing before? Are there interesting things you're embedding in that newsletter? Are there films? Is there other content? Are you able to also weave into that any positive things? One thing we didn't talk about here really is mental health. That's a huge thing that I would actually say, this is not the answer to the question, but as a brand, that is one thing that's another stream of things that brands can do very well right now. If they're talking about things that they think are important, or how they're doing it for their employees, or also just in terms of causes that they're supporting. But if we were to go back to that newsletter, if you've still got great things to write about and to add value to, if it's genuinely good new content, but it has to be very generous. It can't just be about your product the whole time.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. There's been a question as well, and I'll just answer this to everyone, about how people can get hold of you, Gabrielle. So what I will do is send a follow-up email with you in copy, so that if anyone does want to reach out, that they can get in touch with you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I have recorded the session. I started it a minute or two in, but I've recorded it, and as part of the follow-up, I will include a link to that if anyone wants to rewatch it or share it, and as well as kind of your bio and your contact information, Gabrielle. So thank you so much. I know we've had a few people leave already, but a big thank you to everyone for coming in first thing after the Easter weekend. I'm sure that all of us hopefully we all had a good break, and there wasn't too much working, but we can now kind of energize with a spring in our step with great advice from you, Gabrielle. Thank you very much. Move forward.
Thank you for having me.
But yeah, and thank you very much, everyone. We're going to be having more online events each week, so keep an eye on our events page for those. We've got a couple coming up there's one about LinkedIn profile and how you can best communicate your profile on LinkedIn, particularly given the current situation. And we've got another one on how to pivot your business with some insights from female founders who have done that, which will be really, really interesting. So I'll keep you updated. But thank you very much and have a brilliant day, everyone. Cheers. Bye. Thank you, Gabrielle. That was amazing.
It was really fun.
No, thank you so much. It was really, really good. And I think at one point there, we had about 60 people on, which is the most I've had so far.
Good.
Yeah, so really good.
Good.
Yeah, everyone. And we've had some really, really awesome people on. So I think the advice today will be very far reaching. Thank you.